The trade deadline is almost here. What are some scary deals the Seahawks could make to jump into the elite of the NFC? We're going to be breaking it down here on this Halloween edition of Locked On Seahawks.
You are Locked On Seahawks, your daily Seattle Seahawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, 12. This is Corbin Smith, host of the Locked On Seahawks podcast, your daily Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Glad to be joined here on Halloween by my co-host, Nick Lee, who I'm wondering if he can see things today. This might be kind of a difficult episode for him, but we're really excited to dish out our thoughts here on Halloween, and a special thanks to all of the 12s who are listening in, whether you are in Lakewood, Washington, or you're listening down in Fort Worth, Texas. Special thanks to all of you for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We're going to be diving into some scary deals that the Seahawks could make that would push them into the NFC's elite. Then we've got our weekly keys to victory, how does Seattle beat Washington on the road, Sunday Night Football, picks to click, game predictions, much more coming your way. Courtesy of Mazda. Like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward, Mazda, move and be moved. Now for your lead story here on our Halloween edition of Locked On Seahawks. The trade deadline only a few days away, coming up on November 4th. That's next Tuesday. Don't expect to see any deals made by the Seahawks here in the next couple days, because they are ramping up, finishing off their preparation for the Commanders. Acquiring a player would not make any sense right now. However, Monday is a day that could be absolute pure chaos heading into the deadline. And sticking with the theme of the day, we're going to be talking about some scary deadline deals that Nick and I think could take the Seattle Seahawks to that next level as one of the NFC's elite and make him potentially a true Super Bowl contender once we get to January. So, Nick, I know you probably can't see your list, but there's a couple of trades that I know you were working up here. What's one that would fit the scary definition here that the Seahawks could make before November 4th?
Well, I'll do my best here. When you put this uniform on, all of a sudden you become visibly impaired, of course. So I had to get my protective glasses as well. So talking about what might make the Seahawks scary is obviously if they shore up their interior offensive line. I think that's where everyone goes when you're thinking of big trade needs. And I'm looking at teams that are going through it down and out. Tennessee Titans, they kind of match that description, don't they? And I'm thinking of guys on expiring deals. Veteran guard Kevin Zeitler and edge rusher Arden Key. Pro bowler, veteran Pro Bowler. There was talk of perhaps him coming to Seattle anyway over the offseason. And then Arden Key, a journeyman edge rusher. He has 12 and a half sacks the last couple of years combined, boosting the pass rush as well. So if you really want to make the Seahawks scary, I think it really becomes true in the trenches, where obviously the Seahawks are very good on the trenches defensively, and I think on the edges on offense as well. But you put a veteran presence. No, he's not a Pro Bowl level guard right now anymore, but the bar is pretty low at right guard right now for Seattle. So getting Zeitler in there and bringing in Arden Key and swapping out for a 4th rounder, a 6th rounder, and throwing Anthony Bradford. Maybe he's a project for them that they can maybe do something with as they rebuild again. And so just just a deal to instantly boost both sides of the line.
And Zeitler, I feel like it is going to be the year 2046, and Kevin Zeitler is going to be retired, and there are going to be rumors about the Seahawks going after him to bring him in to fix their offensive line. It seems like it's been a decade running that we've been talking about Kevin Zeitler. It hasn't been as long for the player that I'm going to mention here, but I'm saying this because of the things I've heard. We talked about it earlier this week. Cesar Ruiz, it's just, there's too many reasons why this shouldn't happen in terms of the New Orleans Saints are 1-7. They're not going anywhere, even though Ruiz is under contract the next couple of years. At some point, they've got to get out of the salary cap hell. And I know there's going to be Saints beat reporters probably hearing it's like, we're not in salary cap hell. We'll just kick it down the line. Like, that's why you're in salary cap hell. Like, you need to fix that issue if you want to get back into contention at some point. So New Orleans is going to fix that at some point. And I think moving guys like Ruiz, it might only be a few million that they're saving right now, but it's going to clean up their books the next couple of years. So I look at New Orleans and the fact that there's that obvious Clint Kubiak and John Benton tie, and that those guys were with a number of players that are on that roster this year. To me, you bring in two players from the Saints, not just Cesar Ruiz. I'm also bringing in Rashid Shaheed. The fact that Derek Young, it sounds like that injury could be putting him on injured reserve. I think getting another twitchy receiver that can create after the catch and also win downfield, knows Clint Kubiak's scheme, can be used on jet sweeps. I think bringing him in and then upgrading at right guard with Cesar Ruiz makes a lot of sense. My understanding is the Saints don't really want any players back in return. They just want draft picks. I'm hesitant to give up a third just for Cesar Ruiz, but if you're putting Rashid Shaheed in there, I'll do a third and put a fifth on as a cherry on top. Look, New Orleans gets 2 middle-of-the-draft picks to help accelerate their rebuild. They get to clear some cap space. Shaheed's going to be a free agent too. Seattle upgrades their depth at receiver, and they upgrade the offensive line. You may say, well, they're still going to have Anthony Bradford, and they're still going to have Christian Hayes on the roster. Depth's not a bad thing to have on the offensive line, and maybe they'll try to flip one of those guys in a separate deal. But I think you go out and you get Cesar Ruiz and Rashid Shaheed and get them back with Clint Kubiak as well as John Benton.
That would legitimize this offense, excuse me, as a top 10, top 7 kind of offense in this league. And one that I'm kind of looking at as well. Another, just speaking of dysfunctional franchises, the Cleveland Browns, I think, are ripe for the picking. Yeah, and the low-hanging fruit, I'll start there. Wyatt Teller. I know. We've talked about this a long time. There's some history there with Seahawks fans, with Uchenna Nwosu, and there's that. Of course, I get it. But we're here to win football games, guys. We're here to win Super Bowls. And Wyatt Teller is instantly better than at right guard than Anthony Bradford. And that's just a plain fact. Okay? It is. I'm sorry. And then let's add David Njoku. Let's do that. Because they got Harold Fannin now. He's playing pretty well for Cleveland. That is where it gets spicy here because he's on an expiring deal. Maybe it doesn't quite make sense on the surface. But you throw in a 4th, 5th rounder. Nehemiah Pritchett, I'm not sure, is in Seahawks plans as far as cornerbacks, just based on, some, just the snap shares and things like that. But David Njoku would be a huge boost and kind of leaning into that passing game because, sure, Wyatt Teller would instantly improve his interior line, maybe get the run game going. But him and A.J. Barner at tight end with JSN out wide with Cooper, are you kidding me? That would be talk about scary. That would be like Insidious Paranormal Activity level scary.
Look, when you initially pitched this, I was like, well, why would they bring in a tight end? And the more that I think about it, I'm like, hey, I'm getting my guard. Why not put that cherry on top and give Sam Darnold a guy that can truly stretch the seams at tight end? And like him and Barner and Arroyo as a 3-headed monster. And Njoku can block too. That's the other thing. Like this would not be just getting a guy that is a seam stretcher. That's more like Elijah Arroyo's game. You'd still have 3 different types of tight end, and you could justify keeping somebody like a Salbert or a Brady Russell as a 4th tight end as a special teamer because of the type of offense they run. They run a ton of 2 and 3 tight end sets. So it makes sense. All right, I'm going to go. Some fans are going to say I'm going off the deep end here, but I'm going to call this the Robert Turbin special because Turbo and I talked about this trade possibility a little bit on Tuesday's Seahawks Squad show. And the more that I've thought about it, I want this deal to come together. And I need fans to understand my rationale behind this. But I just watched the Miami Dolphins get blown out by the Baltimore Ravens again. They just fired their general manager this morning. They are going to be ripe for the pickings. And Jordan Brooks is still one of the most underrated players in the NFL. I think you go get Jordan Brooks and bring him back. No offense to Drake Thomas, who's played well, but I think Jordan Brooks next to Ernest Jones, that is a top 3 linebacker tandem. And I get Devon A-Chain who is a phenomenal all-around back that has had success in the past running in a Shanahan-style offense. That's what they run in Miami too. Put a 6th rounder in there that you get from the Dolphins. Send a 3rd K9 and Tyrese Knight back. And some of our listeners are going to say, why would you trade Ken Walker here? Look, I think that, A-Chain is a lot more like Ken Walker than what he is Zach Charbonnet. So I still think Charbonnet gives them a different dimension here. Oh, by the way, Walker is a free agent after this season. Tyrese Knight right now, he would be the number 4 linebacker making this trade. It feels like that would be some value for the Miami Dolphins to get a young guy that can play a lot of snaps right now and maybe grow into a starter, because Brooks and Jones would be together for a couple seasons minimum. So I don't know that something like this happens, but the more I've thought about it, like, this is the kind of trade that makes sense with the scheme that the Seattle Seahawks are running on both sides of the football. And A-Chain gives them another dimension in the passing game too. He is arguably the Darren Sproles of the league right now in terms of upside. I think you add that to this offense and you put Jordan Brooks next to Ernest Jones. That makes this Seahawks team scary. And does it stink you have to give up K9 as part of that deal? Yes, but I also think you have to look at who's fitting into a scheme. And I'm just wondering if going to Miami is going to help him unlock some things. And Turbo talked about it. We both kind of agree. Maybe it might be time for a change of scenery for him. So this is one of those things you have to give a little to get a little, but I think the Seahawks are a better team making this trade, significantly better making this deal with the Miami Dolphins. So let's see if any of these scary deals come to fruition by the November 4th deadline. When we come back, we're going to shift our focus away from the deadline to do the game that's coming up on Sunday, because guess what? That's more important than what the deadline is. Seahawks Commanders Sunday Night Football. We're going to dish out our keys to victory coming up next here on our Blue Friday Halloween edition of Locked On Seahawks. This is Mazda's Moving the Game Forward, brought to you by those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it, because these moments do more than win. They push what's possible. They remind us to go that extra yard, shift into that extra gear, and keep moving the game forward. The Seahawks had a bye week last week, but the week before got themselves a big win over the Houston Texans, and Jackson Smith-Njigba continued his torrid tear, over 120 receiving yards and a touchdown to help the Seahawks beat the Texans in prime time. That's what keeps fans and players alike moving forward, always chasing that next great moment. When you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. The NBA is officially back, and there's no better place to get into the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or you want to ride out the hot hand like a Steph Curry or a Jimmy Butler, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Welcome back to the Halloween edition of Locked On Seahawks. I'm your host, Corbin Smith. He's Nick Lee. A special thanks to each and every one of the 12s out there. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate it. As we do every Friday leading up to game day, it's time to devise a game plan for a Seahawks victory. And Nick, we're going to start on the offensive side of the football. And I've talked about this a little bit on a few episodes earlier this week, and I'm basing a lot of this off of the film that I've watched of the Commanders this year, who are 3-5. And obviously the injuries and offense have been part of the reason they have struggled to win games this year, but it's also been an issue. They just look slow at a lot of positions on the defensive side of the football. And most recently, Monday night, the Kansas City Chiefs didn't run the ball very well in the first half. They started to get their run game going in the second half, early in the third quarter, when they started testing the Commanders off tackle and to the edge. And this has been an area that a lot of the teams the Seahawks have played have been pretty good at defending. The Commanders, though, Bobby Wagner's still a good player, but Bobby Wagner is 35 and running sideline to sideline is not a strength of his anymore. Frankie Louvu, the other starting linebacker, is more of a downhill thumper. He's not known for running sideline to sideline. The Chiefs had great success with their perimeter run game, and they also were getting those crossers going over the middle. They were getting ideal one-on-one matchups against Washington's linebackers. To me, that is maybe the biggest key for the Seahawks offensively in this game. Can you get that perimeter running game going like Kansas City did? Really test those linebackers out athletically and do that in the passing game as well and really push their thresholds in terms of those deep crossers and having to defend them and getting into matchups with running backs, more athletic receivers, even the tight ends. I think if the Seahawks can do that, that is a big way to move the football against this team. And consistently, opponents have been doing it this year.
First of all, I want to shout out Justin Harvey in the chat for saying I'm dressed as a Chiefs fan. That's a great one. Anyway, so with this, yes, you're right. The linebackers, how this offense could attack them is kind of how I attack when I get stuck in Madden or in College Football 26, where my offense is kind of stuck in the mud. All right, it's mesh time, it's crossing time, and putting those linebackers in positions of conflict with your slot receivers, your tight ends. And the Seahawks certainly have a receiver that is up to that challenge by the name of Jackson Smith-Njigba. And I read on ESPN, the Commanders have allowed 27 pass plays of at least 20 yards, which is second most in the NFL. And some of that is due to their struggles underneath in the passing game. So Frankie Louvu and Bobby Wagner both have allowed passer ratings of north of 120. Louvu has been charged with 3 touchdowns, which is third most among linebackers. And he has the 6th most missed tackle rate among linebackers. The linebackers for the Commanders, sorry, Bobby Wagner, love you, are not great at this juncture, like you mentioned. And then that kind of leads into the other points as well. And I like to look at like the scoring drive or average drive allowed kind of numbers. I like that kind of stuff. And Washington is actually 28th in time of possession allowed per drive. They allow those chunk plays, those drives to be sustained. So I think it would be a great way for the Seahawks to kind of take control of this game by having at least 2 scoring drives of at least 4 minutes. Because you see, if you look down the drive charts of the Seahawks, they usually get between 1 and 3. Sometimes they don't have any. Sometimes they've only had 1. Getting multiple just kind of takes the game out of Jaden Daniels' hand on the other side and rusts your defense, because any elite defense can get broken down if they are overused. But you keep them on the sidelines. There's a rhythm to the game with the run game, some passing. Keep the chains moving, keep the drive moving, and get that off that defense, because like we've seen, they break down. And if the Seahawks can maintain those drives, especially if this is like, we're talking first, second, third quarter. In the fourth quarter, it is going to be just gangbusters against this defense if they can maintain these drives. And also that goes into my third point, which is the first downs. Yeah. I know 19 first downs is a bit of a specific one, but I was looking at when the Seahawks reached 19 first downs this year, they are 4-1. And when the Commanders allow at least 19 first downs this year, they are 0-5. So that seems like a nice point there too.
Yeah, and look, I hate to keep picking on some of these guys, but look, the Commanders, one of the reasons to me that the sustained drive thing is even more important this week, you mentioned wearing the team down. I'm looking at starters for the Commanders right now, Nick. Von Miller off the edge. Von Miller is not far from being 40 years old. Von Miller is not a guy that in the fourth quarter is going to want to be defending run plays and defending another long drive, okay? He's getting up there in terms of age. Frankie Louvu and Bobby Wagner. Louvu's not old by any means, but his game does not match up well with that. And Bobby Wagner is getting up there. And again, this is no disrespect to Bobby. I think he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. He still does some things really well. But I think you get those guys wore down. I just named off 3 guys in this starting lineup that are on the older side of things, especially 2 of those guys. And then they got a few guys in the secondary who have had their issues with getting tackles and finishing them, in Jeremy Reeves and Marshawn Lattimore. So I think that 19, 20 first down threshold and getting 40+% third down rate, because that tells me you're sustaining some of these drives. This is a game, it's especially important to do that, because I do think this is a defense, and even some of their backups are older players like a Preston Smith, Nick Ballore. I mean, they've got some older players on this roster I think you can really wear this team down because of that if you are able to sustain some drives early. So I think that's massive. And you look at the defensive side of the football, for me, the first big key when I look at defending this team, it always starts and it finishes with how you defended the quarterback. And we've talked about this with Kyler Murray when they played Lamar Jackson a few years ago. I think there's always some wrinkles to how you defend all these guys because they're all slightly different in terms of their overall skill set. But as I've always called it, it's that aggressive yet cautious pass rush plan versus Jaden Daniels. You want to speed his clock up. And this is a QB that will take some sacks. He has done that dating back to his college career. But he also can be an absolute nightmare in terms of getting outside the pocket, stepping up and finding creases. If you lose on your pass rush integrity and you leave the slightest seam, even coming off an injury, the fact they're already saying he's going to start tells me that he's feeling pretty good. He's going to take off and he will do a ton of damage. So you have got to have your pass rush lanes in good shape. You've got to be careful with how many stunts that you run because that can put you in positions where seams open up if you don't get home. Blitzing does the same thing. It's got to be an aggressive, like you don't want to be passive going after him, but at the same time, you also don't want to get too far afield. And guys in the middle, you don't want to get too cute with trying to make counter moves and stuff because you open up a seam, this guy will find it. And that is a recipe for disaster if you let Jaden Daniels have several big carries when he was dropping back to pass and he burns you that way. And it's much easier said than done to stop it, but you have to have aggressive yet well-defined and, conservative, not conservative, but cautious pass rushing lanes against this guy.
And Froggy makes a good point in the live chat about Scary Terry being out, and that helps you allocate resources elsewhere because you're not worried about their top weapon. And that also does include defending Daniels. And I think the Seahawks have proven under Mike Macdonald that they can do that because of the limitations they've put on guys like Kyler Murray since McDonald's come to town. So I like those numbers. And then you got, the number 2, which is limiting yak. Excuse me. Deebo Samuel used to be a yak demon. He's not really anymore. He's having, I believe, his worst yak per reception season of his entire career again in Washington. Sure, there's some different styles, different things they're asking them to do than versus in San Francisco, of course. But he's not that guy anymore. Don't let him be that guy again, of course. But you have other threats too, like Luke McCaffrey's broken free a few times. Zach Ertz, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. And then the one that I want to kind of highlight as well is kind of goes into my third point here. Beware of running backs in the passing game. Krosky-Merritt, of course. Jeremy McNichols is actually 4th in the entire league.
In Boise State, baby.
That's right. I knew it was coming. Yep. He is the 4th, I believe, in yak per reception among running backs. So of all the running backs in the NFL, he is efficient at making his limited opportunities turn into long gains. You cannot allow a 3rd and 8 kind of give up screen pass to McNichols turn into a 12-yard gain and a first down for them to sustain drives. You got to wrap up and not let those get loose because like has been mentioned with Scary Terry McLaurin being out, you can allocate resources to those kind of things. So yeah, it's just the smart tackling. And then I've always liked the term rush with integrity or gap integrity. That just screams this to me with Jaden Daniels.
Yeah, and I love you pointed out the yak part, and it really goes with the personnel that they've got. They don't really have a guy that is going to consistently take the top off of defense right now without McLaurin being healthy. And so I think it does some things with what you could do schematically. I think you can play a little bit more close to the vest in terms of being closer to the line of scrimmage and having guys there. But you got to swarm. I don't care what Deebo Samuel's stats look like in terms of yak. That is a guy historically that has killed the Seahawks. You have to have multiple defenders flying to the football when it's thrown his direction. And the same could be said for McCaffrey. He is a guy that he's not quite his brother, but he's a guy that can rip off big plays with the football in his hands. And they do a lot of stuff with quick passing to him. So they have got to be clean tackling this week. That is, to me, that and managing Jaden Daniels and making sure he doesn't kill you with his legs, especially on extended passes that aren't designed runs. If they can do those couple things and limit the yak as a result with the tackling being there, it's going to be hard sledding for this Commanders team to move the football, especially without Terry McLaurin. If they're able to get a bunch of first downs, though, after contact and they are creating plays, manufacturing with the football in their hands, and Jaden Daniels is doing what he does, then it becomes a very difficult task for the defense. So this is one of those games where sometimes you have games where there's some gray area on how things are going to go. I can tell you if the Commanders have those two things clicking, this is not going to end well for the Seahawks. Those are the two ways that this Commanders team can really pull this win off with the lack of momentum they have had, the injuries, and some of the struggles that they've had. That's allowing them to get back into it, especially without McLaurin available. When we come back, we've got picks to click. We've got game predictions, all that coming up next here on our Blue Friday Halloween edition of Locked On Seahawks. What do you get when you have a bald eagle standing on top of a silverback gorilla riding a T-Rex? That's what you call pure confidence. If you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rougiette Go Long. This isn't just another ED pill. It's a total game changer for confidence. Go Long combines two doctor-trusted medications into one dual-action formula so you can get hard to go the distance. The effects can last up to 36 hours. That's confidence all day, all night, and even into the next day. And the process is simple. Connect with a board-certified doctor 100% online, and if prescribed, your treatment ships discreetly right to your door. Ready to level up your confidence in the bedroom? Head to rugiet.com and use the promo code LOCKEDNFL for 15% off your first order. That's rugiet.com, promo code LOCKEDNFL. Make sure to use our code so they know we sent you. Welcome back to the Blue Friday edition of Locked On Seahawks. I'm your host, Corbin Smith. Joining me here for our Halloween show, my co-host, Nick Lee. And a special thanks to each and every one of the 12s tuning in. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. I'm laughing at the blind ref over there trying to figure out what's going on at his office. Anyway, we've got our weekly picks to click. Last week, we didn't get to do this because the Seahawks were on a bye. And Nick, right now, I've got a 4-point lead over you in this category. There's been a couple that have been close calls, but I'm trying to get some separation here in our picks to click. Let's start on the offensive side of the football for Seattle going up against this Commanders defense. Who is your pick to click in Landover and why?
Well, with what we talked about the defense and some putting them in positions of conflict, I'm going to go with a guy who I think can take advantage of that. Not the low-hanging fruit, of course, is Jackson Smith and Jigba. But I'm going to go with a guy who I could think hit him on the seam. David and Njoku. No, I'm just kidding. AJ Barner. AJ Barner on defense or on offense here with the tight end. And I think it's going to be one of those where he's not going to go 100 yards, but I think he can make some key first downs, some key catches there. Maybe he makes a big catch in the red zone to get goal to go or a touchdown there. He had only one catch for 7 yards against Houston. I think that was a down game compared to what he's been doing this year. And I don't think that happens a second straight game. So give me A.J. Barner, a couple big first downs, maybe even a tush push. We've seen a few of those from him for a first down. He makes an impact somehow in this game.
I got to just mention this real quick before I dish out my pick to click here. Our good friend Bryce Coots from the Hawks Eye chilling and listening to the show today. And he loves your costume, by the way, blind referee. So everybody make sure to say hi to our good friend Bryce as he listens in to the show. As for my offensive pick to click, I'm going up the same vein as you. You're talking about getting that tight end involved, attacking the middle of the passing game. I am getting K9 going. And I know we were talking about deadline deals earlier. Look, I don't think he's on the move at all. We were talking about some trade possibilities, but they've got to find ways to really maximize his talents. And I think this is a game where that want to run outside mentality is going to play. It's going to pay dividends. And I also think the passing game, if you can get K9, who doesn't even have 10 catches yet this year, Nick, he has not been a big part of their passing game. This is a game where I'm trying to find ways. How can I scheme it where I'm getting him up against Bobby Wagner or Frankie Louvu, and they're having to try to defend him because athletically, they're not going to be able to cover him. I think if you can find ways to get him involved there, he could have a massive game. So much so that I've got him scoring 2 touchdowns, one as a receiver and one as a runner. I think K9 matches up well with what the Commanders have struggled against this year. So I'm thinking a big game coming for Ken Walker, III. Let's get to our defensive picks to click now. And Nick, you and I are both, some of our listeners might be thinking we're reaching a little bit on our selections, but every single game has to do with the matchups and the type of scheme you're going up against. And I know there's one corner in particular that you were looking at thinking, this seems like a matchup that is made in heaven for this particular player.
Absolutely. And not just because my best friend met his parents at the airport the other day, and they were very wonderful people. Seems like he came from great upbringing. Josh Jobe, I'm a huge fan. Just with the development he's blossomed into, and especially basically when the Seahawks needed him with Reek Woolen, kind of hot and cold, some injuries to Spoon and the like. Josh Jobe has been there. He's been like a good neighbor. Josh Jobe has been there. And 61% or 61.7 passer rating allowed is the best amongst the starting defensive backs for the Seahawks this year. And so, of course, Deebo Samuel, Zach Ertz, those guys, Luke McCaffrey, those are going to be matchups that we're looking for Josh Jobe. Obviously, he's going to be tasked a lot with being a short tackler, making sure Deebo Samuel doesn't get yak, or if Spoon's locking him up, certainly making sure guys don't leak behind. And Josh Jobe has been great at that, and he's been great at not allowing the big plays. He doesn't always make the giant YouTube highlight worthy kind of plays, but he's just been steady. He's been consistent. Like that insurance company. He's always been there. He's always there, and not too high, not too low. And I expect this game, in fact, I do think he makes a splash play and gets an interception in the end zone to stifle a scoring drive for Washington.
Yeah, and I'm going to stick in the trenches with a player. This is the third time I've picked him, and I've yet to hit. So I'm hoping – this has been one of the few things that has been a struggle for me this year. Boye Mafe has got 20-plus pressures. The Seahawks are the only team in the league going into this week with 4 players that have done that to this point. And Mafe is one of them, but it hasn't turned into sacks or really quarterback hits. He's only got 2 QB hits this entire season. But he's also had some bad luck. He's had a couple sacks that have been wiped out. He had a strip sack that was wiped out by a holding penalty in the defensive backfield against Houston. The Texans are likely going to be without Laramie Tunsil in this game at left tackle. They've got a rookie in Josh Connerly on the other side. This is a game that Boye Mafe should absolutely eat. And he's also had some success against mobile quarterbacks. One of the best games in his career, even though Seattle got crushed by the Ravens a few years ago, Mafe had 2 sacks in that game on Lamar Jackson. He's had success in the past against Kyler Murray. He's athletic enough that he can handle quarterbacks that can move like that. I think Boye Mafe doubles his sack total here. I think he gets 2 sacks on Jaden Daniels in this game. I think he gets 3 quarterback hits. I think he gets a really nice little catapult here going into the final 9 games as he tries to build some of that value back up as he heads towards free agency next year. All right, game prediction time, Nick. This is going to be a somewhat, I guess it's 2 games, 2-game differential. I'm up on you on 2 games. We both got the last one correct. So no gain for you. We've got the Seahawks. We've got the Commanders, Sunday Night Football. How do you see this game shaking out?
Well, I know it's not going to be Halloween during the game. I know it's going to be November 2nd or something. But, it's the Halloween weekend, some weirdness, some weird things have happened in that stadium. Last time they played there, it was 17-15. Some weird stuff happened in that game. And I saw that the Commanders are actually 0-3 against the spread in prime time this year, so that they've struggled a little bit there. So I'm going to go with another weird game. Hopefully the officials have a bit better eyesight than I do currently. And I'm going to go with in fact, I'm going to go so weird for Halloween weekend. I'm calling a scoregami. In fact, I think we should agree, Corbin, if I call this directly and we do get a scoregami, 25-18 Seahawks, we should even up the score, even though I have a deficit in our matchup. 25-18 scoregami, Seahawks win.
If there ends up being a scoregami, I will give you that benefit of the doubt.
Sounds great.
Okay. I'm going to go with one that is not a scoregami, even though it's right after Halloween. I think Seattle wins this somewhat comfortably. I'm going to go 30-20 Seahawks. I don't trust Washington's defense. They've had injuries. Dorian Armstrong going down was a big loss. They've lost a couple other players. Marshawn Lattimore has had 1 or 2 games. He's looked okay. He's had a number of games. He's gotten toasted, though. I think JSN is going to win that matchup of former Buckeyes. I think the tight ends are going to get involved. I think the run game is going to get rolling with their wide zone. Some outside running this week is going to work. I just don't think Washington's defense is very good. I think they've got some significant holes, and I think Seattle takes advantage of it. So I'm going to go 30-20, Seahawks moving to 6-2. As always, you can follow me on X and Blue Sky, Corbin Smith NFL. You can follow Nick at NickLee51. Make sure to subscribe to Locked On Seahawks on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast to make sure you don't miss a single episode. Coming up on Sunday, it'll be somewhat late for the West Coast viewers, but we've got a night game on the East Coast. So the post-game show should be up before midnight, but we will have our post-game show hopefully breaking down a Seahawks victory. There also will be a Seahawks squad show with Rob Rang, Robert Turbin and company immediately after the game. So make sure to listen into that as well. Enjoy your weekend and enjoy the game on Sunday night. Go Hawks.